So the year is 1959. The country is Slovenia, and the players are Tigran Petrosian and Bobby Fischer, two former world champions, both with very different play styles. That's what makes this game so fun. Fischer, known for his dynamic play, kind of very well rounded, could do everything. Petrosian, known for his unreal ability to defend any position and kill his opponent's ideas before his opponent even knew what his ideas were. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but his defensive ability was out of this world. Fischer was hypercritical on Petrosian's playstyle. He had many good things to say about it, many bad things to say about it. He's like, yo, this guy's defense is unreal. He's like, yo, this guy is too defensive. Both could be true at the same time. This game is going to be the one that was referenced in yesterday's video, the one where 4 queens on the board at the same time, but I only referenced it. Today we're going to explain it. Bonus points. Was Slovenia part of former Yugoslavia? Also, what do you guys think Fischer's opinion on chess.com would be right now? I have a few ideas. I think he would agree with the fact that chess.com needs to chill on the updates. A few years ago, chess.com was so simple, so easy to navigate, so user-friendly, and now it's so confusing. It's like, imagine owning a company, paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars to make it worse. They say don't fix what's not broken. Please stop fixing what's not broken. This might be an unpopular opinion. Maybe I'm just like, you know, when old people don't know how to do anything on their phone, I feel like, oh, where's this nowadays? Maybe I'm just one of those people now. Balkan Deda, Balkan Grandpa, but I swear every update the website gets worse. So relax. Got some chat GPT programmers, some know-it-alls in the meeting room. Pawn to h3. Okay, we got this pin variation. It's not actually called that. It's called the Mindeno variation. Is the bishop going to go back? Is it going to exchange? We get an exchange, and we get knight to f6. Also, I want to thank you guys for 800 subs. I already got my watch time, 200 subs away from monetization. If I had a master plan, step 1 would be to get monetized. Step 2 would be to get demonetized, because that's just what's going to happen if you know anything about me. Pretty polarizing guy. Also, really don't care. Some stuff just comes out of my mouth and we just let it happen. Bishop to d2, stopping the pin. But seriously, thank you guys. If you don't stop the pin, if you go bishop to g2, then we're going to get pawn to d4. It gets a little dicey, right? Pawn to a3. You get this Scandi pin that happens sometimes. Except over here, you know what I'm talking about. Hopefully, maybe. Kind of irrelevant. Bishop to d2, cutting the pin. And knight to b1. Do love this move. It is a good reroute for the knight. Because after the exchange, the knight aims at c4. It aims at f3. Which are much better squares for the knight than anything it could have possibly done on c3. Alright, Petrosian locks it up with pawn to e5. And then he plays c5. So he's getting a little bit of a space advantage. Makes some sense. We get castles, knight c6, and queen e2. I want to pause here. What is the point of queen e2? Well, this is a very good pawn structure, and you want to start to chisel away or hack away at it. This queen was a little misplaced on f3, so the reason he moved it to queen e2 is actually to play pawn to f4 and start chiseling away or hacking away at this structure. Right? You got to pose some questions, create some tension soon. White is fully developed, so now is the time to start striking. White still doesn't know which way black is going to castle. Is he going to go queenside? Is he going to go kingside? It's funny, some of my students play the Caro-Kann and I'm like, oh, you're playing the worst French? Obviously a joke, I just like the French better. But psychologically, you know, you don't know which way to attack if you don't know which way your opponent's king is going. Pawn to f4, maybe Petrosian never planned on castling kingside, maybe he was deterred by the fact that f4 was played, but he goes queenside. And you see the second Fischer knew where his king went, he makes a plan with a pawn. This move is not to stop the knight from coming to b4. It's to go pawn to b4. A clearance sacrifice to clear the b file, to clear the a file, to get a direct route of attack on black's king. We get knight to e8. Again, this is Petrosian. We're going to get defensive measures, precautionary measures. Pawn to b4, a clearance sacrifice. I'm not so sure what Fischer did not like about taking, because if knight takes b4, you get this pawn. And if queen takes b4, it's not so much better. You just take this guy, you're aiming at f7, you're aiming at a7 in case the knight ever takes and guards f7, and you have the open b file, or semi-open should I say. But okay, we get knight to c4. That is a very good square for the knight. Precautionary measure by Petrosian. We get an exchange, some simplification, and some more. I wouldn't call that simplification. I would call that take the pawn so I could attack your king. All right, knight to a5, offering up a trade. Knight to b5. This is a beautiful square for the knight. It's quite hard to go c4, and this knight can be a menace later on. Is it defensive? Is it offensive? Knowing Petrosian, it's probably defensive, but it could be very offensive later on. Knight takes c6, b takes c6. Look at this. This is a wacky pawn structure, but black's king is actually completely safe. So Fischer tries to poke and prod and do otherwise. He wants to double up on the f-file. We get pawn to g6 and pawn to h4. I do love this move. Opens up a diagonal for the bishop. Maybe stops some queen infiltration on g5. And flank pawns are meant to be used. People are like, I don't want to move my flank pawns. I don't want to get checkmated. Black doesn't have an attack here on the king side. Also, when the center is locked and your pieces are mobilized, you should use your flank pawns. They should be used to paralyze your opponent. They are unexpected pawns. They come down the board fast. They exert a lot of pressure. The board is a square for a reason. Don't forget about the flank pawns. King to b7 and pawn to h5. Asking questions. There's an answer. Queen takes b4. He's like, okay, your rooks are not connected on the first rank, so I think I can get away with taking this pawn. Fischer's like, I'm going to give you a check. King to b6, only safe move. Ironic, right? You'd think on the 8th, but on the 8th, it's going to get trapped on the 8th later on. King to b6, it actually has more air over there, some more breathing room. Queen to f2. Try to pause the video and break this move down. It does a lot. Yes, it coordinates itself with the rook, but also what it does is it pins the pawn to the king, allowing for c4. And this is beautiful. This is a motif in many, many endgames. This is a backwards pawn right now. What is a backwards pawn? Well, it's a pawn that if it's pushed, it'll get taken. c4, it's no longer a backwards pawn. It made it above the hump on the third rank. It cannot get unpassanted. Is unpassanted a word? I think so. Because it's pinned. And it asks questions to the knight, gaining a tempo. So that is a beautiful move. Instead, Petrosian goes a5, but okay, the pawn is still pinned, so we get c4. Knight to c3. He only offensively moved it when he had to. Isn't that hilarious? And rook to f1, tripling up. We got Alekhine's Glock. Pawn to a4, pass pawns are fast, and queen to f6. Now, there's only one move for an advantage for black. The move is queen to d6. Which isn't so crazy when you look at it, but when you look a little deeper, it's pretty crazy. Because Fischer would for sure go queen to g7. We would get rook d to g8. Looks like the queen is not such a happy camper. But rook to b7, now it looks like black's king is not such a happy camper. Only winning move for black, king to c5. Can you believe it? King on the 5th rank, surrounded, almost in a mating box. But it's the safest king in the world. Nothing can get to it. I bet Fischer would love to have a dark squared bishop in this position, but he didn't. So that is an incredible move. Queen d6 would have been incredible. This game is amazing. I really like this game. We get rook takes h7, right? That is not a free rook because that would be a rook with check, with tempo. So rook d to f8, a brilliant move. Not according to me, according to the engine, a brilliant move. I thought it was like not common sense, but you got to do something, right? So queen takes, we get major simplification, and now we are off to the races, right? Yesterday, we looked at a game with 6 queens. Today, we're looking at a game with 4 queens. The only difference is it's 2 world champions, so that is quite amazing. Okay, queen to a7, defensive measures. We're always going to get that from Petrosian. And pawn to g4. Are we going to get 5 queens? Maybe. Stay tuned. All right, Fischer's like, you want to trade, bro? Petrosian's is like, I don't know. Do you want to trade, bro? I'm kind of unsure. He's like, nah, your king is kind of not safe there. Also, imagine how much calculation went into this game. I mean, I can only imagine how fried their brains were afterwards. Respect to Petrosian for avoiding checkmates, because I don't think anybody in the world would want to play Fischer. Nonetheless, Fischer with 2 queens on the board. So that is pretty crazy. Queen to h2, king to b3. It's crazy. It's a king march just into white's territory. Queen to a1, threatening mate. You could see the bar went down, so Fischer missed his one opportunity here. See if he could find a move that he didn't. The move is c5, a clearance sacrifice. You might be like, what is that clearing? Isn't that just a free pawn? Well, what it cleared is the g8 to a2 diagonal, and now you coordinate with a tempo. And it looks very scary. I mean, you look like you're on the verge of getting checkmated here as black. This would be insanely hard to hold. Also, white has an outside pass pawn. Mustn't forget about that. But okay, we get queen to a1, queen to a3. They're probably fried at this point. We get a queen trade finally, and now the game can simmer down. Fischer found the best square on the board for the queen. Aims at the pawn, routes over to the king, supports the pawn, stops black's queen from infiltrating. That is a beast of a queen, right? Finding the right square for your pieces at the right time, that's a skill. King to g2, not allowing the queen to infiltrate. King to b3 and queen to d2. Not allowing the knight to get to d1 and e3, right? Knights and queens make the best checkmating patterns. So freezing a knight from coordinating with a queen is a good thing to do. Bishop to d3. I'm sorry, not bishop to d3. Fischer is lucky that this bishop is guarding d3. Now we're stumbling over our words. Let me stop. Let him stop. King to g3 was not a great move. Should have went king g1, but he probably didn't want to go backwards and deal with infiltration. What is the problem with king to g3? Try to find the second brilliant move. That is queen takes e4. And if you take, you are in a losing minor piece endgame. So Fischer went queen to f2, consolidating. We get queen to h1. Believe it or not, they agreed to a draw. I don't blame them. I can actually fully respect this game as the outcome being a draw because it was very confusing. Maybe it was simple to you guys, but to me, it was a very complex game. I hope a lot of it made sense. I tried to make sense out of it, and this is what we got. So thank you guys as always for watching. Thank you for everything, and I will see you next time. Have a great day. Boom.